Welcome back to the Republic Brothers Podcast. He's Matt, I'm Mike. Today's February 4th, 2026, and this is episode 33. Before we get into the show, please hit the subscribe button and like the episode so you don't miss our next episode on Monday. This episode is loaded. We're breaking down the doxing of federal agents in the Alex Pretti shooting. We'll talk about whether that's accountability or something far more dangerous. We're also digging into the ICE pullback in Minneapolis, why this isn't a retreat, and how Democrats are holding DHS funding hostage with new enforcement demands. Plus updates on Iran, the Grammys' anti-ICE meltdown, and why Hollywood keeps proving it's completely out of touch. Let's go. All right, Matt, welcome back. Let's get started with our update segment. One of the more disturbing developments to come out of the Alex Pretti shooting in Minneapolis isn't just the incident itself. It's how the media has handled it afterward. This week, ProPublica published the names of the two federal agents involved in the shooting, who are Latino, I might add. According to the reporting, both agents are Latino federal officers assigned to a DHS surge operation. ProPublica claims naming them is about accountability, but critics argue this crosses a dangerous line, especially in the middle of heated protests where law enforcement has already been targeted. We still don't even have all the details, and yet before any official findings, a major outlet chose to publicly identify the agents, effectively painting a target on their back. So Matt, is this journalism or is this political pressure? Because once you normalize doxing federal agents before investigations are complete, you're no longer protecting transparency. You're incentivizing intimidation.
If you want to hold someone accountable, hold the people who wrote the laws that are allowing them to do this accountable. The funniest thing about all of this is the way the media is reporting it. There were no new laws passed that let Trump do this, just like there were no new laws passed that let Joe Biden open the border for millions of illegal immigrants to come in. This is political pressure and a pressure tactic to persuade people not to be ICE agents. They hope that if they dox enough of them, recruitment for ICE will plummet and the enforcement actions will end, simply because they don't have the agents to do it. The political pressure is the first part, where they hope they can abolish ICE, but if that doesn't work, hollowing it out by scaring everyone away from the agency is an acceptable alternative to them. It reminds me a bit of the Washington Post reporter who decided to dox the Libs of TikTok channel. You may remember that. Taylor Lorenz was her name. She doxed the owner of that account, and shortly after, she herself was doxed, and that was when she realized it was bad. Only after it happened to her. Apparently, some people have no ability to look ahead and predict basic things that will be true in the future.
Ironic. Well, another update we're getting out of Minnesota is reports that about 700 federal immigration officers are being withdrawn from the Minneapolis area effective immediately. Border Czar Tom Homan framed this partial drawdown as a result of what he called increased cooperation from state and local authorities, especially agreements allowing ICE to take custody of certain arrested individuals directly from the county jails. This reduces the need for large street operations. Homan also suggested that the reduction reflects what he described as a safer environment and that fewer personnel are needed now that some logistical roadblocks have eased. He said the remaining force will shift toward more targeted enforcement operations rather than the broad patrols. However, he made clear that about 2,000 federal agents will still remain in Minnesota and that the overall operation isn't ending until his criteria for cooperation and law and order are met. The withdrawal of 700 federal immigration agents from Minneapolis is not a defeat. This is exactly what you said a few episodes back. Donald Trump will not back down. This is Tim Walz and the politicians finally realizing that they better cooperate. There's a bunch of people protesting and making noise, but in reality, more people want mass deportations than they're letting on. You see all these Hollywood people at the Grammys doing their usual virtue signaling, and we're going to get into that later, but normal people don't think it's fair for these illegal immigrants to just cut the line. And we certainly don't want the ones here that are committing crimes. This was not a retreat by the Trump administration. There are still about 2,000 federal immigration agents in Minnesota, far more than the roughly 150 before the surge. This is exactly what we said it would be. Trump not backing down and Tim Walz tucking his tail between his legs.
And this is why Trump sent Tom Homan to Minnesota. He is calming things down, but he understands the job and he will not give in to what protesters want. It sounds like Tim Walz might have started to realize the easiest way to get rid of ICE is to let them finish the job. The more they get in the way, the longer ICE is there. To be clear on something you said about committing crimes, all of them committed a crime. At least one, because crossing the border illegally is a crime in itself. Tom Homan said himself, you don't need as many agents if the local police are going to allow you to take them from the jail. It is far safer and it takes fewer law enforcement if the detention of the illegal immigrants takes place in a controlled environment. And as you said, this is all predictable. The fact that the local politicians in Minnesota couldn't read Trump is their own problem, and much of this was avoidable. Look at how smooth the crackdown on crime went in Washington, D.C. The Democrat mayor worked with Trump and in 1 month had a far safer city than she had ever had.
Yeah, that's the argument that I keep seeing from all these liberals on social media, is that they're not just deporting criminals. They're saying that the numbers are always made up. It's always something different. I've heard 30%, I've heard 70%, or whatever of them didn't commit a crime. But like you said, they already committed a crime when they came here illegally.
100% of them have broken the law. It is illegal to come across our border in an unauthorized area through a border checkpoint. If you don't come through authorized areas, it is illegal and you have broken the law and you should be deported.
Yep, absolutely agree. Now, I have to admit, ever since I saw the episode of Tim Pool with Nick Fuentes on, I have been listening to him a bit more. I understand now exactly why people like him. He says a lot of what we're thinking, but don't say out loud. On his show a few days ago, he was talking about Minnesota. He was talking about the deportations and the whole Alex Pretti situation. He was saying all the same things that you and I have been saying for several episodes now. He mentioned the AI photo of Pretti that the media went with, how he attacked the agents the week before and wasn't even arrested. And the funniest thing of all this is, have you seen the checkpoints that these people in Minnesota are setting up in the middle of the intersections?
Yes.
They're setting up checkpoints with barriers and stopping cars in the street to check their papers and make sure they belong in the city. They are literally protesting ICE and Border Patrol and have turned themselves into a Wish.com Border Patrol. How stupid are these people?
I've seen it all over the news the last few days. It's really funny to me that to protest ICE, they set up borders and then enforced their own rules. These are also the same people who are against laws that state you need to have a government-issued ID to vote, and they are out here checking people's IDs. How ironic is this? They can't see that they are doing exactly what ICE does, but just not legally because only the government can block the road and detain and question you. The more interesting part of this story, I think, is still coming. Minnesota State Police said they would deal with this. Let's wait and see what they mean by that. As I said, it's illegal to block the street, yet they have looked the other way in the past. I'll hold my judgment on Minnesota State Police until we see what actually comes from this.
I'm beginning to think that that entire state is just full of corruption.
It is.
And speaking of corruption, the last thing I want to mention in our Minnesota update is Ilhan Omar. Omar is now claiming that she plans to sue anyone who claims that her attack was staged. So, Matt, would you like to apologize to Ilhan Omar?
I would like to apologize to absolutely no one. Did I claim it was staged, or did I say it seemed really fishy to me? I told the truth with no intention of misrepresenting the facts. It did not make sense to me at the time, and it still doesn't. I will not apologize unless I'm flat out wrong. I stand by what I said.
Yep, same here. All right, let's move out of Minnesota here and move on to our government shutdown update. Luckily, this time, it did not last very long. The House of Representatives narrowly passed a $1.2 trillion funding bill to reopen the federal government following a brief partial shutdown. The measure cleared the House on Tuesday by a 217 to 214 vote, ending a 4-day lapse in funding and sending the legislation to President Donald Trump's desk for his signature. The package reflects an uneasy bipartisan compromise. While GOP leadership in the White House backed the deal, 21 Republicans broke ranks to oppose it, arguing it surrendered leverage by only providing a 10-day stopgap for the Department of Homeland Security and failed to include broader priorities like the SAVE Act. At the same time, 21 Democrats crossed party lines to ensure the government reopened. Most federal agencies will remain funded through the end of the fiscal year on September 30th, 2026, covering departments such as Defense, Health and Human Services, and Education. DHS, however, has only been funded through February 13th, creating a short window for lawmakers to negotiate contentious immigration enforcement reforms and oversight provisions. Now, let's talk about what the Democrats want in order to agree to fund DHS, and we can break these down one by one. So, number one, mandatory body-worn cameras and accountability measures. Okay, fine. Make them wear body cams. I don't care. That's not going to help the Democrats' case that ICE is terrorizing people. Just like they said years ago demanding that the police wear body cams, it did not show mass racism and cops killing people in the streets. It gave us all a front row seat to see the ignorance that these cops put up with every single day. It had the exact opposite effect that the left wanted.
This is a moot point. Kristi Noem approved $20 million worth of body camera purchases. The agents were already going to be getting body cameras, and as you said, the body cameras being worn by police officers have shown that the wild racism that these officers are supposedly committing actually isn't happening, and that each encounter they have usually results in the suspect doing something wildly stupid that forces the officer's hands. Body cameras are a good thing because most of the time, it's not the law enforcement officer that's doing the wrong.
Yep. The second thing they would like is to restrict anonymity and masking of the agents. This is so stupid. They wouldn't need to wear the masks if you left-wing nuts would stop demonizing. All they're doing is their job, but you keep calling them the Gestapo, and then you're surprised when people dox them and try to attack them.
They don't want to wear the masks, but they know the left will dox them. Go back to the previous topic we just discussed, and you will hear us talk about them doxing agents.
Number 3 is stronger warrant requirements. They want warrants signed by judges so that they can't arrest as many illegal immigrants. It'll take them longer, and in some cities, the judges will just decline to sign due to their political affiliation instead of upholding the Constitution.
This is their hope to bring ICE to a halt. The legal system is slow, so enforcement actions would be brought to a grinding halt. I hope Republicans will never agree to this one. And you are right, in liberal cities, the judges will just deny the request, forcing every case to go through the appeals process, which will cost taxpayers millions and prevent illegal immigrants from being deported.
The most ironic thing about this is that for the last year, we've been hearing the left tell us that these illegal immigrants are not getting their due process. And we've been saying that they don't need a judge to sign the order. But yet, here is the proof in the pudding that the left is now trying to make it so that they do have to have a judge sign it. They've been lying to you this whole time. The next point is limit aggressive enforcement tactics in sensitive locations such as schools, hospitals, and child care facilities. I don't care about this one way or the other. Let them have this one. Don't let them have it. I don't care. But if you don't belong here, you don't belong here, regardless of where you are.
Another pointless measure. This reminded me of Trump's 28-point peace plan with Russia and Ukraine, where most of the points were pointless. They want to, quote, limit aggressive enforcement tactics to sensitive locations. What does that mean? Do they think ICE goes in saying, hey, let's make some heads roll in this preschool? No. They would like every encounter to be calm and peaceful, but they don't decide how other people will react to their presence. It's not their decision how it goes.
Yep. Next up is broader accountability and oversight. This is just the Democrats' way of sticking their hand in the cookie jar and getting as much information as they can to twist up the story and cause chaos.
I really just saw this as them needing enough bullet points on the slideshow to really go against ICE. This really doesn't mean anything because anytime something happens, they investigate the incident and that report is available to anyone who needs it. They're just trying to make it look like they're doing more than they are.
Next is the opposition to unchecked administrative policies. Many Democratic lawmakers argue current DHS practices, including broad surveillance tactics, racial profiling, and mass deployments of federal officers, must be curbed before additional funding is approved. This one is pretty funny because it is such a simple solution. Just cooperate and stay out of the way, and they wouldn't have to mass deploy officers. Hand them over at the jail, and they'll send 2 officers instead of 2,000. And the racial profiling thing is such a load of BS. They are not profiling people. The majority of people who are here illegally are from Latin countries. You know why that is? Because Biden was letting them come in from Mexico and hop the border. It's a lot harder to hop an ocean than it is to hop a fence.
Very true, and that's why when you look at Europe, most of their illegal immigrants come from the Middle East because they don't have to cross an ocean. You don't need an airplane or a boat to go from the Middle East to Europe. They act like 3,000 officers is a lot of people. They just got a good example of what you said. They decided to cooperate, and ICE pulled 700 agents. That would be 23% of their force. Just to inform everyone of what your government is capable of, what you're seeing from ICE is nothing. The CIA and NSA can turn your TV on, even if it's off, and broadcast any message across it they want. What you see here is nothing. But on a different note, I hope Democrats continue with this because a defund the police type position will not go over well with the Americans in the next election. We've seen it before and it didn't go well, so keep it up, Democrats. I hope you do.
Yep. And this bill only funds DHS until February 13th. What do you think is going to happen on February 13th, Matt? I'll give you one guess.
I would be shocked if they came to a deal before the 13th. I have no idea how this will go, but when you consider the amount of noise you hear from the left on this, and then you see the list of demands they have to agree to fund the department, I just don't know what they will find acceptable because I don't think they know. The left and the far left base of their party will be disappointed with anything other than the abolition of DHS. And because of that, I don't know how they get out of this.
Yeah, I'm mostly shocked at how this bill even passed to separate DHS from the rest of the funding. The fact that 21 Republicans said no to this, and then you had 21 Democrats say yes to it and cross to vote with the majority of Republicans, that should tell you all you need to know about it.
Well, when you consider the test vote to get this vote to happen went exactly along party lines, it's a bit of a surprise that after the test vote, Democrats would cross as well as some Republicans. I get the Republicans' point that this really could put DHS in a bad spot. Keeping in mind, DHS includes the Coast Guard, so the military could be hurt by this. I would have preferred to see them hold out and try and get more for DHS, but keeping the government open, TSA and the FAA really can't afford another month-long shutdown, so overall, I think it's a good deal for Republicans to take.
Yeah, I agree. It is a bit surprising how it all shakes out, but again, we're heading for disaster here in a week when this funding runs out.
Yeah, well, we do have an update on Iran today. Iran has challenged the location of the meetings with the U.S. diplomats, so the meeting has been moved to Oman. This is the Iranian regime just trying to survive. Iran wants the talks to only be about its nuclear program, but the U.S. has made it clear the ballistic missile program, as well as human rights and regional militias, will be a topic of conversation. Iran is at its weakest moment in decades, and the Trump administration knows that. The regime will do everything they can to keep power, but Trump may force them out at this moment. There is a chance the Trump administration will make it clear they can leave now or we will take them out. The region will be worried about what a potential new regime will bring, but is it worth leaving this regime in place and risking them becoming stronger again in the future and potentially terrorizing the region? Instability in Iran is still there, as inflation is still running at around 40% annually. For everyone in the region, this is a gamble, and we will see how it plays out.
The enemy you know is better than the one you don't. Do you think that applies here?
For many, yes. There is a bit of a misconception when it comes to power. When a country's leadership falls, that creates a vacuum of power. Anytime there is a vacuum of power, different factions will start to fight for control, and you never really know who will win that fight and be the new leader. So some choose to keep the current leaders and hope they can keep them weak for a while. That's why we've seen many nations in the region say that they won't let the U.S. use their airspace. They're trying to remain neutral just in case the current regime stays. But the biggest story to come out of all of this over the last day or two is the U.S. shooting down an Iranian drone on February 3rd, 2026. A U.S. Navy F-35C shot down an Iranian drone. The drone was approaching the USS Abraham Lincoln in international waters, and U.S. Central Command described the drone's movements as aggressive with unclear intent, despite de-escalatory measures from U.S. forces. The U.S. shot down the drone in self-defense, ensuring no damage or injuries were taken from U.S. forces in the region. This happened on the same day a U.S.-flagged tanker was harassed by IRGC forces in the Strait of Hormuz, with the IRGC approaching the vessel with small boats and drones. The USS McFowle responded and escorted the tanker to safety. These are not actions that would lead you to believe they're going into negotiations. Normally, you want to have good faith negotiations, and potentially attacking a nation's military isn't the best way, and harassing their vessels aren't a great idea. We do not know what will happen in these negotiations, but Trump would be wise to topple this regime. If the Islamic Republic is able to remain in power and eventually rebuild its capabilities, they will remember this and make us pay for it. I know the regional powers will be worried the next leaders of Iran will be worse, but the odds of that are not high. There is a good chance they are just as bad, but when you consider the current constitution of Iran calls for the destruction of the Western world, what could the next regime do that would be so much worse? The big question is, what will Trump do if there is no deal, which I do not expect there to be. One thought is Trump may shoot at the leaders and force a new regime that way, but I think Trump is starting to get frustrated with the Iranian leadership. I also think he is frustrated with Russian leadership, so I think there is a great option for Trump to shoot at the ballistic missile and drone production facilities that Iran has. We know Iran is supplying Russia with drones that they use to target infrastructure and agriculture in Ukraine, so why not go after both enemies with one strike? Trump has a chance to move the needle in both conflicts with one decisive action.
Do you think it's possible that Trump or anyone in his administration has had any contact with any of the political opponents or maybe new potential leaders in Iran that he might be paving the way for?
It is possible, but we'll never know. That kind of information would destroy the Trump administration's position in negotiations, so they would never admit to it. I've said before that the hardest part of this is the rebuild part. Taking out the government is the easy part. Rebuilding it afterwards is the hard part. Trump may have started planning for what comes next, but we saw with Venezuela that was not the case. So I would kind of assume here he didn't start that planning either.
All right, that pretty much wraps it up for our update segment. I want to move on to the Grammys the other night. Did anyone actually watch the Grammys? It feels a lot less like a music award show and more like a political sermon from people who live in a completely different reality than the rest of the country. Now, I just want to go over a few of the dumb statements that these people put out there and the absolute hypocrisy. Take Billie Eilish, for example, who proudly declared, quote, "Nobody is illegal on stolen land," which sounds deep and rebellious. It's also BS and completely collapses in under 5 minutes of scrutiny, because the same moral framework she's preaching from conveniently ignores the fact that her multi-million-dollar mansion sits on land that the Tongva tribe considers ancestral. No chance she gives her mansion and all that land back.
Yeah, nobody cares what people in Hollywood say anymore. These are people who will soon be replaced, and they know it. That is why they are so worried about AI. If what these Hollywood elites thought mattered, Kamala Harris would be our president. Billie Eilish's mansion in LA is worth something like $3 million, and there's no chance she gives that up. My question is, what will her manager tell her to do? Do you stay quiet and hope this all blows over, or do you say you were wrong? Surely she can't come out and say she was wrong and stay in the good graces of the Hollywood elites. So staying quiet and pretending it didn't happen will likely be the answer. I really did like that the Tongva tribe made a public statement saying she has never reached out about turning the property over. It is so stupid to me, though, when people talk about stolen land. I hate to break it to everyone, but all land has been stolen multiple times at this point. The people who were the original natives to every part of this planet have been displaced many times throughout history. When someone says it is stolen land and it should be returned, are they talking about the previous owner of the land or the people those people bludgeoned and murdered to take it from? Do not sit there and say the last group who owned the land were peaceful, because in almost every case, they got it by invading and murdering the last group who owned it. Billie Eilish, to me, seems like she was told to make a political statement, and she didn't know what to come up with, so she went along with the theme of the night, despite the fact she didn't really know how the world works.
Yeah, she's young, and she's just listening to everyone around her who also doesn't know what they're talking about.
And she made millions of dollars by the time she was in her 20s. She never really experienced the world.
Yep. Well, then we have Bad Bunny, who gave us the simple ICE out message, and Kalani went even further to say F ICE, attacking the agency responsible for enforcing federal immigration law. Not the politicians or lawmakers, the actual agents doing the job that Congress assigned them.
Did you learn Spanish? Because Bad Bunny told you to learn Spanish for his halftime show.
I did not. I will be watching the Turning Point USA halftime show this Sunday.
I'm competing in the competition Sunday afternoon to see who can hit the mute button fastest. Bad Bunny told us learn Spanish, but it doesn't seem like he learned enough English to say anything other than the political message that the left would like. So I won't be listening to him either.
There's not a bunch of people that want to tune in to the Super Bowl. The original people that watch NFL all season long do not want to see some dude on stage in a dress singing in Spanish. But luckily, we only got to hear about him for 20 minutes on Sunday, and then we can move on. But the moment that really exposes the double standard is Jelly Roll and his speech about God and not politics, but suddenly that is controversial. Open hostility toward law enforcement? Applause. Radical political slogans? Cheering. Thanking God, though? Nope, now we have a problem. Hollywood shows us over and over again that you're allowed to speak as long as you say the right things. You're allowed to be bold as long as you punch in one direction. But as soon as you step outside that script, talk about faith, responsibility, or moral grounding, and the same crowd that preaches tolerance suddenly can't tolerate you.
As you said, bold in one direction. You can come out like Demi Lovato and say you're trans and that it's such a scary and terrifying thing to do. And you feel like you're going to be persecuted even though you know everyone in Hollywood will praise you for it. It's just really crazy to me. The controversial part of Jelly Roll was that he told people to control something that an individual can control, and that is your own actions. Hollywood really loves to pat itself on the back for things that don't matter. As I just said, if what people in Hollywood said mattered, Kamala would be president. It's ironic to me that all the elites that live in gated communities with armed security, who have no idea how the world actually works and how the average person lives, thinks that we should listen to them because they're more important than us.
Yeah. DHS claims there's been over 600,000 deportations, and we've had 2 shootings. ICE is not the Gestapo. It's not even close to the same thing. And for the people saying that they aren't just deporting the criminals, we went over this already. They're all criminals. But if you want to talk about the crimes other than crossing the border illegally, good. We did not vote for just the criminals to be deported. We want everyone here illegally to be deported. For anyone out there taking their political advice from celebrities, you are dumber than they are. Ricky Gervais said it best in his 2020 Golden Globes monologue. He said, quote, "If you do win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech. You are in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg." So, Matt, how does that sum it up?
That monologue from Ricky Gervais was the greatest monologue ever. He's standing in front of the Hollywood elites, making fun of the Hollywood elites, and some of their faces when he made jokes about them were so funny. People wonder why everybody liked Leonardo DiCaprio more after that event. It was because Ricky Gervais made a joke about him, and Leo laughed at that joke. He could laugh at a joke about himself. That's why people liked him more. And you're completely right. The part everyone seems to forget is every illegal immigrant causes the cost of living for people in the country to go up. Does one immigrant cause it to go up significantly? No. But when you bring them in by the thousands, which Joe Biden did, it does make a real impact on people's lives, which is why you had a Republican win the popular vote for the first time in a long time. People got 4 years of Trump and decided to move on. But when they saw the alternative, they decided Trump was the better option. Ricky Gervais was right, but his message was not Hollywood approved, so he will never be welcomed back. And he even acknowledged it in that monologue.
Let's move on to some other former elites that think they're above the law. The House Oversight Committee panel gave Bill and Hillary Clinton just hours to agree to sit for interviews about their relationship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, or face being held in contempt of Congress. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise said during a press conference that the Clintons had until noon on Tuesday to agree to cooperate with the panel. The Clintons initially refused to comply with subpoenas for interviews from the Oversight Committee. The refusal led the panel to vote in a bipartisan fashion to hold both the former president and the former Secretary of State in contempt of Congress. A full House vote on holding the two in contempt was scheduled for Monday, but hours before the vote, the Clintons agreed to cooperate. Clinton spokesman Angel Urena said on X, responding to the committee, quote, "They negotiated in good faith. You did not. They told you under oath what they know, but you don't care. But the former president and former Secretary of State will be there. They look forward to setting a precedent that applies to everyone," end quote. Now, here's the thing that sticks out to me. This is not about cooperation from the Clintons. It's about accountability being forced, not volunteered. Bill and Hillary did not suddenly decide that they wanted to be transparent. They moved when contempt of Congress was staring them in the face. If you and I ignored a congressional subpoena, we wouldn't get a friendly deadline extension and a press release spin. We would get real-world consequences. But here, the Clintons refused. The House Oversight Committee voted, bipartisan I might add, to hold them in contempt, and all of a sudden they're ready to cooperate. And then the spokesperson blames the House committee, saying the Clintons negotiated in good faith, and accuses the committee of political theater. Good faith doesn't look like refusing subpoenas until the clock runs out. We see the same pattern over and over again. We get reports that someone with some power gets in trouble, everyone freaks out, and then nothing happens. All we want is a little accountability.
That is how it always goes. In politics, it doesn't seem like you ever volunteer information. Power and accountability do not usually go together. Who holds the leaders of Iran accountable? Other than the U.S., nobody. Isn't it amusing that the Epstein files were supposed to get Trump, but there are far more questions about the likes of the Clintons? Former Prince Andrew also has some really bad news that he's going to need to answer for. Bill Gates didn't come out of this looking any better. New York Giants co-owner Steve Tisch also has some questions to answer. I do not expect much to come from any of this. Criminals of this level are usually pretty good at keeping enough information to blackmail, but not enough to get someone imprisoned. Epstein was evil, but not stupid. Do not expect much more to come from the interviews the Clintons do with Congress. They can give just enough to keep Congress off their back. They already said they have been cooperating, so expect more of this, because that's what cooperating looks like. As Trump said earlier this week, it's time to move on from this story. I know why we keep going back to this well, but if there was something in it that would end Trump, we would have seen it during the Biden administration. Time to move on. We are not getting anything out of this. The main perpetrators are dead or imprisoned already, and there's no incentive for anyone alive to talk anymore. It is over.
Yep, I agree. It is time to move on. Before we get into the end of the show and our blind ranking, I want to bring up the Nancy Guthrie disappearance real quick. Trump just posted on Truth Social not too long ago that he spoke with Savannah Guthrie and let her know that he's directing all federal law enforcement to be at the family's and local law enforcement's complete disposal immediately. He said they're deploying all resources to get her mother home safely. So I just wanted to bring that up real quick. Hopefully we will get some news on that soon and she gets returned safely. Aside from that, it is time for our blind ranking segment. Today's category is non-politicians that you would vote for president. Once Matt locks it in, he cannot change it. Are you ready, Matt?
Let's do it.
All right, Matt. So your first one up is Taylor Swift.
Oh, Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift. I feel like ever since she met Travis, she's swaying a little farther to the right, so I'm going to put her right in the middle at 3. There's better and there's worse, I know. Let's see. I'm going to split the middle here.
All right, next up, you got Mark Cuban.
Cubes. Don't call him that, by the way. I would have gone a little higher than Taylor years ago, but he's got some pretty left-leaning policies that would cause immense harm.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, I'm going to go 4.
Okay, going Mark Cuban at 4. Next up, you have Elon Musk.
Well, you know how I feel about Elon. 1.
All right, 1 for Elon.
We would get some very weird tweets.
Uh-huh.
And the government would say some things that were a little weird, but we'll get over it.
Yep.
And we will probably be the most efficient government we have ever been.
Probably. All right, you have 2 and 5 left. Next up, you have Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan. Oh. I would rather have Rogan than Swift, so I have to go 2.
Okay, number 2 for Joe Rogan. And in your number 5 spot, you have Dave Ramsey.
That hurts a little. I'd move Dave to 3. I'm happy with 1 and 2, but
when I put the list together, I expected you to go 5 right off the rip with Taylor Swift, and that you would have Cuban at 4, And then I figured you would have Musk 1, Ramsey 2, and Rogan 3.
Well, I assumed like Lil Nas X or somebody like that would be coming. You said famous people. Non-politicians was very broad. I assumed other people were coming. Nicki Minaj was a possibility in my mind.
That's true. Oh, I didn't even think about her. I should have put her on the list. Although you have to put her higher than Taylor Swift or Mark Cuban.
She's ballpark with Taylor Swift. I wouldn't put her above Joe Rogan.
Yeah. She's definitely higher than Taylor Swift, though.
My mistake was on Dave Ramsey. I didn't think that one was coming 5, but
yeah,
he would have gone 3. Maybe in hindsight, Mark Cuban over Taylor Swift, but that one's a little closer because Mark has some very weird opinions on certain things, so it's tough, but
yeah,
we'll see.
I almost threw Kevin O'Leary into the mix, but then I didn't want to throw in Mark Cuban and Kevin O'Leary. I was trying to balance it out a little bit.
See, Mr. Wonderful would go above Joe Rogan.
Oh, for sure. Definitely.
Because he is a very smart guy who understands business. I would definitely put him above Joe Rogan.
Mm-hmm.
Although he is Canadian, so technically.
All right, well, that's it for episode 33 of the Republic Brothers podcast. If you're still listening, you're exactly who this podcast is for. Before you click away again, please hit the subscribe and follow button. New episodes drop every Monday and Thursday. If you agree or disagree with anything we talked about today, drop a comment and let us know. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.